Hey everyone, Sebastian from the Rhythm section here, and this week instead of doing a review, I'm going to be doing a video essay type thing on one of my favorite Spanish language folk rock albums. If you haven't heard it already, I would definitely recommend checking it out before watching the video. Definitely listen to the song Por, especially, because I'm going to be talking about that one pretty extensively, but I'm not going to be including any clips because of copyright issues, so there you go. Enjoy! In the late 60s and early 70s, rock music was reaching an unprecedented level of commercial success and cultural relevancy, with the rock style hitting it off in the US and English bands invading radio airways in the US. But the wave of popularity reached beyond the Anglosphere, and lots of Spanish language bands were actually starting to pop up in Latin America in the 50s and 60s. Bands like Los Gatos were grouped under the tag of the Nueva Ola, or New Wave in Spanish, bands who were introducing rock to a Latin American audience. As the early era of blues bands and boy bands died down in the wake of hard rock, psychedelia, and other new styles, Luis Alberto Spinetta of Argentina emerged as a pioneer of early Spanish-language rock. But rock had not only developed new genres and playing styles by the early 70s, but new cultural significances as well, with singer-songwriters like Joni Mitchell giving their lyrics a depth of intimate self-expression that signaled the new search for identity in rock, while groups like Love and The Doors contributed to the countercultural movement that rejected the structures of society. Spinetta embraced attitudes from 60s bohemianism, as well as the very personal styles of folk and singer-songwriter that were emerging at the time, as evident on his 1973 album Artaud, which recontextualized these values for the politically turbulent 1970s Latin America. Artaud was officially released under the name of Spinetta's previous band, Pescado Rabioso, or Angry Fish in Spanish, but it was mostly an independent effort, and as a result it's normally considered a Spinetta solo album. The album is notorious for the unorthodox shape of its original LP packaging, but Artaud is far from a novelty piece. It was a far more personal and introspective effort than the past hard psych work that the band had released, and the other members of Pescado Rabioso ended up leaving the creative process due to the significant changes in style and sound. The album retains some of the bluesy guitar work of hard rock and the eclectic sound collage and lyrical content of psychedelic rock, but it's mostly a folk rock record with tendencies towards singer-songwriter introspection and reflections on Spinetta's budding relationship with his future wife, Patricia Salazar. It was with Salazar that Spinetta wrote the lyrics for the song Por, track 3 on Artaud. Por is a somewhat progressive folk ballad that's never really excessively flashy or virtuosic, but it does feature very quick-moving chords, a pretty free-flowing time signature, as well as a deceptively complicated chord progression, which features a lot of key changes and out-of-key chords. And the instrumentation consists of entirely acoustic guitar and vocals, with some light strumming and some arpeggiated riffs. So despite the kind of elaborate composition, Por actually keeps a thick veil of simplicity through its very earnest presentation. The stripped-back acoustic instrumentation and clean vocal performance make Por an approachable ballad that fits in a similar space between folk and singer-songwriter to Bob Dylan. The folky style definitely draws emphasis to the lyrics, because usually from songs in this style you'd expect like a really passionate account or some dense lyrics, but in the case of Por, the increased emphasis on the lyrics really just underscores that the lyrics are actually entirely nonsensical. Basically, Spinetta trades more poetic precision in his lyrics for kind of like poetically conceptual lyrics. Mirroring the flowing nature of the composition, the lyrics completely shatter grammatical syntax, consisting of a seemingly random series of nouns which vary line to line, from the mundane, like te, mar, gas, tea, sea, gas, to more eccentric, such as the line estalactita mirador, or stalactite viewer. Several of the lines are charged with symbolic or external meaning, like when he sings cruz, which means cross, or corazón, which means heart, but he doesn't really give any sort of lyrical cohesion or context that would give the words any sort of meaning other than external meanings that the listener is just assigning themselves. Reflecting on the writing of Por, Spinetta details that the guitar part was already finished when he wrote the lyrics with Salazar, and that their methodology was simply to choose words based on their sound and how they fit into the vocal melody. Spinetta and Salazar's deviant approach to writing lyrics, as well as the intricate composition of the song, in conjunction with the wonky packaging and musical departure on all of Artaud, represent deliberate choices made by Spinetta to subvert the musical traditions and expectations of Spinetta's music and the musical tradition that he existed in, largely a result of the influence of both the countercultural movement on Spinetta as well as surrealism. Spinetta shared much of the anti-establishment sentiment that had popularized in the 60s. In his manifesto on rock music, he wrote, "En la profesionalidad se establece un juego que contradice la liberación que pudre el instinto." In professionalism, there emerges a game that contradicts liberation and rots the instinct. He believed in rock as a form of expression and self-discovery, but believed also that attempting to appeal to commercialism sacrificed this potential. His anti-establishment perspective was strengthened by the influence of surrealism, a movement that emerged in Europe in the 1920s, which placed greater importance on the unconscious mind and dreams than on the physical world, lending itself particularly well to being expressed through psychedelic and eclectic imagery like on Por and across Artaud. The surrealist lyrics on Por were not just an aesthetic choice by Spinetta, though, but more of a reflection of the effect that surrealism had on his personal philosophy as a whole. The most explicit reference to a specific train of surrealist thought on Artaud is the title of the album, which is named after the surrealist French dramaturge Antonin Artaud. Artaud is recognized for developing a style of theater called the theater of cruelty, which actually involved very little cruelty in the traditional sense. Instead, Artaud's new style of theater aimed to bombard the senses of the audience in an unconventional way, intending to transcend regular language and awaken the unconscious mind, which he thought would cause people to become aware of the evils of the outside world. When asked in an interview about the influence of Artaud's work on his music, Spinetta expressed a similarly high valuation of the unconscious and its role in the physical world, admitting, "Creo que solo si nos preocupamos por sanear el alma vamos a evitar distorsiones sociales y comportamientos fascistas, doctrinas injustas. I believe that only if we concern ourselves with cleansing our souls will we avoid social distortions and fascist behaviors, unjust doctrines." So in this quote, we can see that Spinetta's surrealist and anti-establishment views actually had some political significance as well. The 60s and 70s were times of political turmoil in Latin America, and it would just be 2 years after Artaud in 1975 that the United States would support Operation Condor, which was a coordinated political terror campaign that lots of the Latin American dictatorships were collaborating on. In Spinetta's home country of Argentina, a military-controlled dictatorship held power for a decade until elections were held again in 1973, which were accompanied by further violence and political instability, but ultimately the justicialist nationalist movement took power. The justicialists were actually based on an Argentine political system called Peronism. Spinetta sympathized with Peronism, which attracted people of conflicting factions by making politically split populist appeals to both leftist values like unionization, but also right-wing values like nationalism. The resulting condition of Argentina was one of political volatility and disagreement, which gave the inward-facing content of Spinetta's music an even greater surreal significance as he rejected all of the chaos surrounding him. And his beliefs continued to reflect the rock counterculture at the same time that they reflected the influence of surrealism, as he expressed his agreement with John Lennon's belief in pacifism, proclaiming, "La única forma de hacer subir el peso es con amor." The only way to lift our weight is with love. So for Spinetta, the lyrical abstraction of Por wasn't just a rejection of musical expectations and tradition, but more of a rejection of society's structures as a whole, as he pretty much stripped away all sort of meaning and context in his lyrics in favor of pure musicality and beauty. As the power structures of the political and professional worlds around Spinetta collapsed, he found himself in a new relationship and a musical landscape that rewarded deviance and yearned for self-discovery. His surreal tendencies could be seen as an escape from the outside world, but I think it was really more than just an escape. I think he used the chaos of the political turmoil and everything surrounding him as a motivation to reject commercialism as well as violence, and to express in his music the immateriality and love that he strived to live by. Alright, that pretty much wraps up everything that I wanted to say about the album. I hope you guys check it out, and I'm gonna go get some Chewy bars. Bye bye!